If you'd like to support this channel, we invite you to check us out on Patreon. Thank you so much. Hey, what's up guys? I hope you're all doing well. This week is spring break, so that means that spring is here. It means that our Bermuda's starting to come out of dormancy. And for some of you guys, you're probably starting to think about either spraying off that Primo Rye overseed, or you got fertilizers, pre-emergence, those kind of things coming up soon. And so today what I thought we'd go through is how to calibrate your sprayer, whether that's a hand pump sprayer, a backpack sprayer, or even a large sprayer like what I use, and even some larger applications. So I'm gonna walk you guys through kind of how to go about calculating that. How much water do you need? How much does it cover per 1,000 square foot? And I'm just gonna break that down into hopefully a simple method that'll help you guys out to figure out how much water you need to do a mix. And that way you guys have good success here in the spring and you don't burn any of your turf while you guys are getting ready to get your season kicked off here. And so before you go spray any kind of liquid, the very first thing you need to go do is you need to go map out your property. You need to go take a measuring wheel, a tape measure, something, and draw out a little property map of your lawn. And you need to find out exactly how many 1,000 square feet you actually have. And that's very important because you can either be over applying products or you could be under applying products. And you can run the risk of either burning your lawn or having not so great results because of it, or you could also end up spending way more money than you need to for applications because you don't know how much actual square footage you actually own. So it's very critical that we go gather that information. You need to go understand how much is that side strip on the driveway, how much is the front yard, the backyard, that weird spot I have somewhere in the property, or even break it into different types of turf varieties. Maybe you've got say fescue on one side, St. Augustine in another, or Bermuda in another section. It's real common out here that we have properties that Bermuda is right up against St. Augustine, and that St. Augustine creeps into neighbors Bermuda, and it just creates a big mess. So for you may have something like that you've got kind of a special section you've got to pay extra attention to, and so you need to know and classify that section. How large is it? So for me, I've got my yard broken into the putting green, the backyard. I have a little side strip here that's really small, and then I do the front yard on its own. And that's how I have mine broken down. So I know exactly how many 1,000 square feet I have, and I know exactly how much product I need before I ever do a mix. So I'm not going to dive into exactly how to do all that. I mean, it's just basic math, length times width. Just break your lawn out into, shapes and just do the math. Go out there and measure it, figure it all out, and draw it all out on a piece of paper so that you have a map. That's very important that you have that. And so what we're going to do to demonstrate and kind of walk you through how to calibrate your sprayer is I'm going to go through here with a measuring wheel, and I'm going to just mark out 1,000 square foot section, and that's what we're going to use to test with and spray on today, and just to give you guys an idea of how to go about all of this. So I'm going to go out here, we're going to take this measuring wheel out, and I'm going to show you guys kind of a quick and dirty way to do that, and that way you can develop your own little test section so that you can figure out how much water you need for your tank. Okay, so like I mentioned, take a measuring wheel like I've got here, or a measuring tape, and all I'm going to do is, if you take a look at my property, it's a rectangle. It's long this way, obviously, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the width of it right quick, because that's my shortest side. So I'm going to take my measuring wheel, I'm going to measure from one side to the other, and then I'll tell you guys how to figure out how to get 1,000 foot section the other direction on our length. Okay, so the width of this property, and yes, I have a little bit of a sidewalk and things like that. Don't worry about that. Okay, we just want to get close to get an idea of what we need. And so from one side to the other, it's 30 feet. And so if I need 1,000 square foot section to test with, all I'm going to do is take 1,000 square feet and divide it by 30. And that's going to give me roughly 33 feet. So I need 33 feet from this point down this direction to give us 1,000 square foot area here to test with. So all I'm going to do is take my measuring wheel. I've got a couple of flags I'm going to put out so you guys can see where that end of the property is. And we're just going to measure 33 feet from here down to the other side. All right, so with that laid out, now we have a 1,000 square foot section here that we can do some testing with. All right, so for our first test and calibration, we're going to use just a hand pump sprayer. This one's a 2-gallon hand pump sprayer. Some of you guys may only have a 1-gallon sprayer, but my advice would be that if you're going to use this kind of sprayer to spray liquid applications of things, you really may want to consider getting a 2-gallon tank. That way you have enough water to cover the area and you don't run a risk of burning things, because some products require a little more water than others, and so you just don't want to run it too lean and take a risk with that 1-gallon sprayer. So for this one today, like I said, I'm going to use a 2-gallon. You can see you've got the different marks here on the side of the tank, tell you how much each one can hold. And so for this test and for the sake of time, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1 gallon of water in here, and we're going to walk this property, and I'm going to show you guys how much that 1 gallon covers in this 1,000 square feet. All right, so I've got 1 gallon of water inside of this tank, and I've also got the widest spray tip that I have available to me. Now, I know that sometimes when you purchase these things, they don't tell you how many gallons per minute the nozzle does, or I guess it would be ounces per minute in this case, but don't worry about that. I've got my widest nozzle on here. We're just going to see what it does. But one thing that I do know about this particular sprayer is it will spray just about every drop that's in this tank out. So when I get to the very end, I really don't have a lot of waste, and that's really cool about this sprayer. And so how we're going to go about doing this test is I'm going to pump this tank up to full pressure, and I'm going to take a full pass. I'm going to go down there and come back, and I'm going to set the tank back down, and I'm going to pump it back up again, and I'm going to take another pass, come down there and back, set the tank down, pump it up again. Now the reason for that is if you use like a backpack sprayer that has a battery or a bigger tank sprayer like I have, it's consistently putting up a constant pressure, and that's how you guarantee that you get even coverage when you're spraying a mix. Now with a hand pump sprayer like this, you get a lot of pressure at first, and as you walk and come back, the pressure starts to drop off, and so that's how you start to develop an uneven coverage pattern. And so it's real important that you try to keep this as constant as possible. And so that's why I like to just go down there and back and pump it up again, and go down there and back, pump it up again, because that allows me to get the most consistent pressure level I can out of this tank. That way that I don't get uneven coverage and I don't get hot spots or weak areas. And so that's how we're going to go about this test. And one thing to pay attention to is your walk speed. I know it may feel like, oh, I've got this chemical in my hand, I got to walk really fast, I got to hurry. But don't worry about that. We're just using water today. Just take a nice, smooth, leisure pace, because you don't want to base your calculations on a really fast walking speed, and then you're just wearing yourself out. This tank gets heavy after a while, and if you're doing a brisk walk back and forth, you're going to wear yourself out. So just take it easy, take a nice, smooth pass back and forth. It doesn't have to be perfect on the first try, guys. It's just water. It's just to give us an idea of what we need to cover 1,000 square feet. So I'm gonna go pump this up. We'll start walking the property. I'll come back and we'll talk about the results. Okay, so I've sprayed half the property here. So just to give you an idea if you're on track or not, look at your tank. You should be at about half a gallon left in the tank, and that's about where I'm at. So that means that my walking speed's consistent and I'm doing good. So if you had too much in your tank left over, then you might be walking a little too fast. And if you're, way below half a tank, then you're walking way too slow. So that'll give you an idea about where you're at. And that's just a good tip for even when you're spraying the actual chemical. Pay attention to where you're at, think about if I'm halfway through the property, I should be halfway through the mix. And that just gives you an idea about where you need to be. Do I need to walk a little bit faster? Do I need to slow down? And just be mindful of that. So let's walk the rest of this and we'll talk about what our results are. So all right guys, so we did the 1,000 square foot with 1 gallon of water. And you can see I've got about that much left in the tank, just a little bit. So we really did a good job with that. And so I find myself more oftentimes than not telling myself to slow down. And you would think it would be the opposite, to hurry and speed up. But you don't want to go too quick, because if you go too quick, you don't get enough water in that application, and you need water to carry these products to the yard. That's why they often refer to water as a carrier. And it's very important that you get enough water in that mix, and you get enough water in that 1,000 square foot with the product so it doesn't burn, or so it can be used to its most effectiveness. So with this hand pump sprayer, I can conclude that with a gallon of water, I can cover 1,000 square foot. Now, keep in mind that you got to still pay attention to the labels on these products. You know, some of them may require at least 2 gallons of water down on that 1,000 square foot. So if that's the case, you need 2 gallons of water, and you need to walk it twice to get all that water and all the product down on that 1,000 square foot so that you do it correctly. But this at least tells us that with my walking speed, and that it takes a gallon of water within this tank to cover 1,000 square feet. And so again, just remember to keep your tank pumped up, keep the pressure on it as consistent as possible, make a pass, and pump it up again. I'm using the widest spray tip I have. I'm not using the spot spray tip. And if you need to buy an additional nozzle for your sprayer, do it. But you need a wide fan for doing this. And so, you know, this works. It's exhausting. That's why I went and bought the bigger sprayer that I did, because carrying this thing around for more than a couple thousand square feet, it wears you out. And it's just not enjoyable. And it takes a lot more time to walk slow with something like this than it does to just throw a granular product in your hopper and go spray it out and you're done. And so there's pros and cons to both, but I like liquid applications because they're more precise and the results are a lot better. And I don't have to wait for little fertilizer prills or little prills of pre-emergent or other products to get watered in, because here we don't get a lot of rain. And so I have to really irrigate a lot to get that stuff to break down and get into the soil to actually do what it's intended to. So that's why, for me, I switched to liquid, but that's also why I bought the bigger tank, because this was just so time consuming and just really got to be where it wasn't worth it for me. So now we know how to do this tank. Let's talk about the bigger tank with the battery, the pump, and some more precise nozzles on it. And this will be more for you guys that have this size, but also for you guys that have the battery operated backpack sprayer. This information will be a little closer to what you're looking for as well. All right, so this information is for you guys that have either a sprayer like this, or if you bought the tank from Northern Tool or Tractor Supply or some kind of ag store that you can pull behind a lawnmower, then this information is for you guys. So this one gets a little more complicated, but still easy to figure out. There's just a little bit more math, a little more precision involved with it, but the principles are still the same. We want to figure out how many gallons it takes to cover 1,000 square feet. So with a setup like this, there's a couple of variables to pay attention to. So the first one is your pump. You know, if you buy these North Star pumps, they have on there how many gallons per minute they can put out, and they also have how much PSI they can put out. So this is a 60 PSI pump, and because of that, I spray at about 40 PSI on my tank, and that's where I ended up calibrating mine. Calibrate it to 40 PSI along with my walk speed, which I'll talk more about that here in a second. That's why I spray at 40 PSI. And these spray tips right here, these are T-Jet, that's the brand, T-Jet air induction nozzles. And I got these because what's neat about them is they will suck in a little bit of air and put a little air pocket in each water droplet, and that helps eliminate spray drift. And here in West Texas, the wind's always blowing at least 12 to 15 miles an hour. That's the norm for us. And so I need to eliminate spray drift as much as possible. And so these really help with that. That helps make that water droplet a little bigger, a little heavier, and so it makes its way down to the ground and not all into my flower beds. It just lands where it's supposed to, and that's what we want. So look on your pump and figure out, you know, how much PSI it can put out. And if you're shopping for a pump, make sure it has a high PSI on it. I mean, you can get higher than 60 PSI, but, you know, for what I'm doing walking, my walking speed, 40 PSI is just fine. So this all worked out great for me. And if you guys want more details about how to build something like this, I have a video that I've walked through every step of the process and all the parts. I have a parts list attached in the description. You guys can go check all that out. I'll link to it in the description. I'll also put a little banner up here so you guys can check it out as well. But if you want to see how to build something like this, definitely take a look at that. And so what I have here is I have the tech sheet for this red nozzle, this air induction nozzle. Like I said, I spray at 40 PSI. And so what I know about my walking speed, so here's an idea, is when I'm on a treadmill, I know that my comfortable walking speed is somewhere from 3 to 3.2 miles per hour. I'm comfortable, I can go at that pace all day long. So maybe if you have a treadmill, hop on there and see what your walk speed is. That's a quick, easy way to figure it out. And you know, there's other apps and things on cell phones and stuff. You could probably figure that out as well. But for me, that's a quick, easy way to figure this out. So on this chart, it tells you, based on your speed, how many gallons per 1,000 square feet you should expect. And so at 3 miles an hour, I should expect 0.91 gallons per tip used, okay, in that 1,000 square foot section. So again, this is the tech sheet. This is what it should be. Doesn't have to be perfect. Don't stress over it. So based on that 0.91 gallons, I have 3 tips. So if you take 0.91 times 3, that gives us 2.73 gallons per 1,000 square feet. So I know that I should expect somewhere in the range of 2.5 to 3 gallons of water should be sprayed in a 1,000 square foot section. And so that's how I went about figuring that out. That's how I know about what I should expect. So what we're going to do is real simple. If you don't have a data sheet, I know that some of you guys, especially you guys that bought the Northern Tool product with this North Star setup, it has those plastic tips on it and they're just generic. And I know there's not a data sheet, doesn't tell you how much it puts out. Still, this information is for you guys. You don't have to have this to figure this out, but the principles are still the same. So what we're going to do to make this easy is we're just going to fill this tank up, okay? I'm going to put 6 gallons of water in it, and that's what I normally use to cover 2,000 square feet. And as I've told you guys before, I know that amount of water is a little bit excessive, but there's a reason for that, and that's because I know that I have about 1.5 gallons or so that's wasted in this tank because the bottom of it's flat. Now, you guys that have kind of a slope tank that fits in your fertilizer spreader, you probably don't have that problem, but I have a little bit of waste factor that I have to deal with. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill up 6 gallons. That way I know I'm going to have consistent pressure through this whole test, and that'll give us good consistent results. And then we'll just walk it and we'll see what happens. All right, so you guys can kind of see this. I marked my tank here, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 gallons is what these lines are. I want to put 6 in here so we can see what happens. So we're just going to fill this up. And something to remember is if you have a tank like this that's sitting on your spreader like this, it's sloped backwards. So to get the true, accurate amount of water in there, you actually have to tilt this thing up to measure it and make sure that you're sitting level. So just keep that in mind. If that's tilted back in any way, you're not getting an accurate measure. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up. 6 gallons. Okay, so let me show you guys this. So I've got 6 gallons of water in here that we're going to use. And our key piece I told you is I spray at 40 PSI. And so what you need to look at is here on your pressure gauge, I have a mark right here so that I can see it, and that's 40 PSI. And so a lot of times you'd have this closed off while you're doing your agitation, that way you're not spraying product out on the ground. So I'm going to turn this on, and so you can hear the pump kick in, it starts to circulate the water, you can hear it start to drop in the tank, so that would do your agitation. So I'm going to increase this pressure to 40 PSI. But something to pay attention to is when you let this valve off, you'll see the pressure drops a few PSI, so you want to adjust that back up when you do this test. So what we'll do is I'll set that to 40 PSI and we'll just walk the property. We'll see how many gallons of water we go through and see how accurate all this is. right, so let's check this out. So we started with 6 gallons. If I raise this up and get it level, you can see that I'm right at, or just below, maybe you can see it, I'm right at or just below 4 gallons. So 2.7 gallons per 1,000 square feet is pretty close to being accurate. I'm probably a little quicker on that, but it's in the ballpark. So I know just from experience that it takes about 2 gallons of water to cover 1,000 square feet well, and I know that that's plenty of water for most products. And so a lot of times what I do is, for instance, this backyard's, including the putting green's, 2,000 square feet. And so I'll usually mix up 6 gallons. So with 2,000 square feet, I should need 4.5 gallons. And that leaves me about 1.5 gallons. And like I said, I have a little bit of waste down here at the bottom because it just can't suck it all off the bottom. And so that works out well for me. And so what I do on that last little bit is, if it's fertilizer, I mean, not so much with chemicals, but if it's fertilizer, I'll just go make another pass, and I'll just keep going till it runs out. And it's not gonna hurt anything, you know, because I'm spraying fertilizer at 1/8 or 1/4 rates anyway. We're not going super heavy, so it's a safe place to be. And so it works out. So what does this mean for you guys? So this just shows that the data sheet's right with these nozzles. It shows that the math works out. But if you have a Northstar setup, or like I said, some kind of ag setup that you have nozzles that are just a plastic generic ones that don't have a tech data sheet with it, what you can do is just put water in the tank and just walk the property and see how many gallons of water it takes. Don't walk super fast, just go at a comfortable speed. See what it takes. And then you're set. You have an idea, you got a baseline. And you know, you may have to adjust it. Maybe you adjust your pressure up or down to get you to be more spot on. So for example, let's say that I sprayed, say my first test was at maybe 35 PSI. And so it only used 1.75 gallons of water per 1,000 square feet. Well, I don't want to do the math to figure that out for, you know, every time I do something. I want it to be easy, like 2, 4, 6, you know? So increase the pressure so you're using more water, and run it again. Figure out what works for you. That's how I found my 40 PSI works good for me, is you can adjust your pressure, you can adjust your walk speed. You've got those 2 variables that you can control and figure out exactly what you need. So it's that simple. You know, if you guys have like a big 14-gallon tank on a tractor, fill up with water, go spray more than 1,000, or you know, spray 1,000 square feet and get that dialed in so that you know, okay, it's going to take me 2 gallons of water, for example, to cover that 1,000 square feet. So with a 14-gallon tank, I can cover up to 7,000 square feet. But just remember, you might have a little bit of waste if that's an issue for you. So just keep that in mind, that you might not get 7, so you might want to just mix up and aim for 6,000 or 6,500 square feet. You know, you'll start to figure out how to divide up your property where all this stuff works out really well for you. And it just takes practice. Just get out there, do water, and just try it, and you'll come out fine. You know, don't stress about it, don't get nervous about it. And the first thing you ever spray needs to just be a fertilizer, and do it at a low rate. Just get comfortable with it, don't burn anything, just ease into it till you figure it out, because you just don't want to burn your lawn. You don't want to go in there with a herbicide and do a blanket spray and then kill your lawn if you're not sure about what you're doing here. So just keep that in mind. Just take it easy, take it slow, start out, you know, with the basics, and you'll be fine. And so it's really that simple to figure out, is just put water in it and try it. And so a key term that you're going to see in these product labels is you're going to see water as a carrier. So what does that mean, water as a carrier? So what that means is, it doesn't matter if I use 2 gallons of water to cover this 1,000 square feet, or if I use 10 gallons of water to cover this 1,000 square foot section. All that matters is that I measured the correct amount of product in that amount of water, and I got all the product down on that section that was calculated. So for example, like on a fertilizer, let's say you're doing 8 ounces per 1,000 square feet. So what's important is if I, for example, put in 8 ounces of fertilizer with 10 gallons of water, if I sprayed all that 10 gallons with that fertilizer, I'm fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything because I still got 8 ounces of fertilizer, of liquid, 8 ounces of liquid fertilizer on my property, on that 1,000 square foot section. So you're good. But, you know, obviously we don't need to do 10 gallons of water, but that's what water as a carrier is about, is you need to just have enough water to carry it onto the property. So that's why a lot of times you'll see 8 to 16 ounces of liquid fertilizer, and that will be mixed in with, in our case, 2 gallons of water per 1,000. So I will mix up, 2,000 square feet. I'll mix up, like I said, 6 gallons, and I'll use that water as the carrier and blanket spray the lawn with 2,000 square feet, and it's covered. I spray it until I get it all out because it's fertilizer, not a herbicide, and everything's fine. Everything works out. So that's what water as a carrier means. That's the kind of the key difference with liquid versus granular stuff. Granular stuff is just how many pounds of a product per 1,000 square feet, and so you just walk until you get all that spread out. But with water, you got to think about how much time it takes, your walk speed, all the things, or your tractor speed. I haven't mentioned that yet, but your tractor speed's another factor. So with the tractor, you're going to be moving a little bit quicker, and so you'll use fewer gallons of water per 1,000, so you may need to drive it a couple of times depending on how that works out. But I would just aim for making sure you got a couple of gallons of water down per 1,000, and I've shown that you won't burn stuff and everything works out great. And so guys, I hope that this information was helpful. I realize that that's kind of a quick overview of just kind of a quick way to kind of calibrate some of this equipment. I realize we can go into a lot of detail about time and distance and PSI and do a lot of math to really get this stuff spot on, but I really just want to create a simple way for you guys to go about figuring this stuff out and calibrating your equipment, and it should get you guys pretty close. But if you find that you still have questions, go ahead and reach out to me. I'd love to help you out. I enjoy talking with you guys, and I'd be more than happy to answer anything that you might have. And so guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you would give it a thumbs up, really appreciate that. And if you haven't already subscribed, come subscribe to our channel. I'd love to have you as part of our community. I really enjoy you guys a lot. This is why we do all this. I just want to really help you guys out with the things that no one else is talking about. I've spent a lot of time in years past trying to find answers to some of these things. I never could find answers to them, and so that's my goal with this channel, is to help you guys find some of that information. And guys, if you're at all interested in supporting this channel, I just want to encourage you to go check us out on Patreon. I'd love to have you as part of our team. We've got a couple of guys on there already, and we're starting to dive into their lawn plan for the upcoming season, getting into those details. So if you'd like some more personalized coaching, that option's available to you there. And so I'd love to have you if that's something that interests you. But guys, I think that's going to do it for this one this week. We'll see you in the next one.